the dream of the ego and the awakening of the self. In this video, I want to talk about something that concerns us all, but we rarely recognize. The illusion of I. We will see how the mind creates an imaginary character, which we identify with, and how this character lives in an unstoppable cycle of fear, lack, and desire. We will also see what neuroscience and the Vedanta tradition say, and how the realization that thoughts are not our own can lead to a deep, liberating awareness, self-knowledge. In short, I want to show how we live in a dream of the mind, what this dream is, why it seems so real, and how we can wake up from it. By the end, you will have understood that you are not the thinker, nor the hero of the story, but the conscious presence in which all this appears and disappears. These words may sound shocking, but they are not intended to provoke. They are meant to wake you up. You are living in a dream, not because your senses deceive you, but because you believe that the thoughts that appear in consciousness are yours. And from this simple misunderstanding, a whole life full of suffering begins. The thinker's dream is clearly visible once the clouds pass. The thinker thinks, I am the one who thinks. I am the one who chooses. I am the one who decides. But neuroscience and psychology are now confirming what wise men have said for millennia. Thoughts arise spontaneously. They appear before we even realize they are there. And the feeling of thinking comes after the thought has already happened. There is no little person inside your mind steering the ship. There is no controller, no thinker, no manager of thought. Yet a story emerges in the mind, in the DMN. From experiences, beliefs, parents, society, friends, and teachers, a character is formed in the circuit, default mode network, in the DMN. This character, the ego, says, these are my thoughts. These are my feelings. This is my life. And so begins the ego's dream. The architect of illusion. The ego is not real in itself. It is a pattern, a structure in the default mode network, DMN, the brain. It takes raw experience, sensations, memories, emotions, and weaves a narrative. I was born here. I have to become something. I have to succeed. I have to become an important person in society. But it's something that watches everything underneath all of that, the thoughts and feelings. But for the ego, there is also a deep, invisible fear. If I'm not important, I might not be counted on, and I might not even exist. This fear of non-existence becomes the root of all evil. It opens the box, Pandora's jar, and all evil escapes. From this root, the ego begins to grow its tree. It seeks validation from others to feel real. It seeks control to feel secure. That's why egoists plan every last second of their day. It seeks attention to avoid extinction. That's why we all want to be famous. And all this time, he ignores the one thing that never moves. Awareness itself, consciousness, presence, the simple knowledge that he exists, thinks, and acts. The tree of samsara, the ocean of constant desire, birth and death. In the ancient text of Viveka Chudamani, the ego and the cycle of suffering are described as a tree. Tamas is the seed, the darkness of ignorance. Desire appears as a small leaf. The activity is the water that makes the leaf grow. The body is the trunk of the tree. Successive lives and the sense organs are the branches. The senses are the flowers. And the sorrow and misery of man in the world are the fruits of the tree. And imagine who is sitting on the branches of this tree and what is he doing there? It is the ego. The ego is the bird, enjoying the fruits of sorrow and misery of the ego's life, because the ego never finds pleasure and satisfaction in anything, no matter how hard it tries. But also the ego, the bird on the tree, does not know that the fruits it eats are poison. And not only that, but the ego does not know that the entire tree is a dream. And certainly the ego has no idea that there is a true self because it is impossible for the mind to grasp consciousness mentally. From Advaita Vedanta, we learn of two forces that create and maintain this illusion. Tamas, inertia, darkness, ignorance, and delusion, the force that covers the self. Rajas, the projected power, the passion, activity, dynamism, and ambition. This creates the illusion of the world and action. These two together form the spell of the ego. Just as clouds caused by the sun's rays hide the sun itself, thus the slavery of the ego caused by ignorance extends until it hides the true self. When the true self, consciousness, is covered by the chaos of the ego, you are tormented by desires, fears, anxiety, and confused identity. So, just as clouds bring cold and discomfort when the sun is hidden, tamas and rajas torment the soul when the self is forgotten. But why does the ego seem so real? Why are we so convinced that there is a little person in our dry head who thinks and makes decisions? The ego, that is the character we think we are. Our supposed identity seems real and solid to us because it is, but only 10%. Indeed, the ego, as thoughts and decisions, serves the body and serves a function. The ego, though just thoughts in the mind, evolved to help the body survive. But there's a problem. The ego is very primitive. Thus, the ego inflates the fear of survival into existential anxiety. It perceives simple events as terrible events. It exaggerates small insecurities and turns them into a lifelong quest, making us chase validation from others throughout our lives. It turns fleeting desires such as food, drink, and sex into endless and unsatisfied striving. It turns comparison into shame. It builds an entire identity from the lack it makes us feel because it never considers us to have enough goods. And in this illusion, the soul becomes Sisyphus, pushing his rock up the hill, only to see it roll back down. Every climb brings a dose of dopamine, but the cycle never stops, because the ego believes that its survival depends on ascension. But there is hope. So, what is always here, present and willing to take us out of the ego matrix? Underneath all this drama, one thing never leaves you, or awareness, the knowledge that you exist without the dream of the ego, even when you're lost in your thoughts, even when you sleep, even when you suffer, the awareness is still there. But you take it for granted. Why? Because it's very still, it's peaceful, it's quiet, very silent and humble, too common for you to overlook. What is peace in the face of the exciting dreams of the ego, eh? What is it compared to the colorful, powerful film of trying to become something your whole life? In the face of the dreams of the ego, awareness is boring. But awareness is not boring, because awareness is freedom itself. It is peace without cause. It's true without effort. You are and were awareness and peace before the story and dream of the ego, the sword of self-knowledge. Now listen to this ancient promise from Viveka Chudamani. This slavery of the non-self, the ego born of ignorance, causing endless sorrow through birth, death, and old age. The ego is without beginning. However, its complete destruction can be achieved. Through self-knowledge, you will know the true self directly. When you are convinced and realize that there is no one who thinks thoughts, you will automatically be liberated. Then meditate continuously. Self-inquiry is the sword that cuts the root. No other weapon will work. Not good deeds, not rituals, not even fire or wind can destroy the ego. Only self-knowledge, clear, direct vision, can reveal that the thinker was never real. The end of the dream. The moment you see that, thoughts arise in awareness. They are not mine. There is no thinker here. The illusion begins to dissolve. You may still hear thoughts. You may still feel emotions, but you no longer claim them. You let them come, you let them go. And in their place, a silent joy emerges, not from becoming, but from being. This is self-realization. It is not a peak state. It is not an achievement. It is not for saints. It is your natural state. It becomes clear once the clouds pass. Sit still, meditate, and do self-examination of thoughts, and know that you are not the thinker of thoughts, not as an individual, not as a doer, but as the unchanging awareness in which all things appear. Let the rock roll away. Let the tree be seen for what it is. Let the bird fly home in silence. You are not the dream. You are the one who never fell asleep but didn't know it. So this is what I had to tell you. We talked about the illusion of the ego, about the way the mind creates a character that we believe is us, and how this delusion leads us into an endless cycle of searching, anxiety, and attachment. We saw that thoughts are not our own, that the thinker is a fantasy of the mind itself, and that beneath this false self, there is always the stable, timeless awareness, our true nature. We understood that self-knowledge is not something that must be acquired, but something that is revealed when the lie of the ego is dissolved. You don't have to become something, just see clearly that you are nothing of all that you thought you were. When the mind ceases to claim existence, silence reveals what was always here. You, pure consciousness, peace without cause. Thank you for being here. Stay still, stay silent, stay who you are, not who you think you are. Created by Elias Stasinos, Om Tat Sat.